Hello everyone, my name is Lucas Perez. I'm the Education and Public Programs Assistant at SDMA, and today I'm going to teach you about Chinese ink sticks. I have an example here, and essentially what these are made of is soot from burned pine trees and some kind of animal skin glue. I have an example of it here. This is deer skin glue that's been dehydrated. So the way that you create ink from this is that you grind this on an ink stone with some water and you create ink out of it. The history of these ink sticks is very ancient. They date back to 256 BC, again from China. And the earliest known example of usage of this type of ink is from excavated tombs from the Warring States period. As Chinese culture spread throughout East Asia, so did Chinese calligraphy and usage of these ink sticks. So you'll see that makers today can be found in not only China, but in Korea and Japan and maybe some other places like Taiwan also. And you can see here they're very pretty. They usually have some kind of landscape image on the other side or a Chinese poem with some characters, and they'll have the maker's marks on the front. Okay, the Chinese ink stick is part of the 4 treasures of study. The other 3, including the brush, the calligraphy brush. This is wool. This is sheep's wool. You could tell because it's kind of white. The paper. This here is some beautiful, very, very thin rice paper. It's almost like tissue paper. And last of the 4 treasures is the inkstone itself. Now the inkstone is really heavy, obviously, and this one is an example from Taiwan that I collected, and you can see there's a dragon and he's kind of playing around in some clouds and he's got a pearl there. So the way that you would use this is you obviously would lay it flat, put some water on it, and then rub it until you create the ink itself. I'm going to actually demonstrate this later in the video, but first I wanted to show you a couple of examples of how beautiful these inks can look, or how they come. Often the makers or people who buy these things almost consume them like fine wines. It's that kind of feeling to them. Here's an example from Japan, and you can see with all the maker's marks on the front, it comes in a gorgeous pine box. If you were to open it up, it usually comes with a little sheet of paper that's kind of like a little piece of artwork in itself, and it kind of describes the maker, the materials they use, the methods they use, what kind of calligraphy this ink is good for, or even what kind of tint the ink stick rather has. Often these ink sticks will have a blue tint, a red tint, a gold tint. So I'm actually going to show you one of the gold tinted inks. Here it is here, and you can see this character here is the Chinese character, also Japanese character for gold. Okay, so this indicates that this particular stick is gold tinted. Here's the maker's stamp right here. Again, it comes in the lovely box. Here's the stick itself, and you can see it has an outer coating of gold. It's got some, you can see though when you rub it, it does become quite black. You don't really see the tint unless you put it against white paper, and then you'll kind of notice the tints. Okay, moving right along. Often calligraphers or artists will collect antique ink sticks. In my case, I have one from the Qing period, and you can see it's from the late 19th century probably, and it's quite old, so the animal skin glue is really, really dehydrated and it's starting to crack all over the place. That doesn't mean that these aren't usable. You can still use these, but the ink it produces is the soot has oxidized, so they're often very brown tinted. So artists who want that look will use these antique inks. It's really cool. Let me show you the granddaddy of my collection, and that's this guy right here. And I collected this in Shanghai from a lovely calligraphy shop in Shanghai. And you can see it comes in the box with all the maker's marks on the top. You can see here it has the Chinese character for blue, and this character would indicate that it's a blue tinted ink. I'm going to open it up real quick. Let me just flip it over. And it comes in a lovely silk bed. And again, the blue character for blue. And then there's the stamp for the maker, and it has a kind of cloud motif on it. Can you see that? There you go. And then if you flip it, it has a lovely Chinese poem on the back. Okay, so these are really beautiful. I love collecting these inks. Each one does something a little bit different. You can use these for calligraphy, of course, but you can also use them for painting. You can use them for different kinds of drawing. They're very, very versatile materials. So next part of the video, I'm going to show you how to actually grind these up to create ink. Let's do it. Okay, let's head into the second part of the video where I'm actually going to teach you a couple of tips about how to grind your own ink. It's fairly simple. I have developed a few little techniques over the years that I'd like to share with you. Obviously, not everyone, can have this huge, beautiful inkstone. In Japanese, they're called tsuzuri. I actually find that these aren't really great to use. The ink gets stuck in these little crevices here and it's hard to clean. So I rarely use these fancy inkstones. This is more for decoration. For everyday usage, I recommend these other inkstones that are quite inexpensive. You can find these at Japanese 99-cent stores. Specifically, one called Daiso sells these for, I think, like $2. They work really great. You get one, it'll last your whole life. So there's the two parts. You have the shallow section where you're actually going to rub the ink. And then you have a deeper section, which is where it's going to kind of hold a reservoir of the ink. Okay. Now, the way that we start essentially is you're going to have the flat part, the shallow part facing towards you, and you're going to have the deep part of the pool heading that way. Okay. Away from you. Okay. You're going to have it facing straight in front of you like this. You're going to add a tiny bit of water to this shallow section, and you want to start with just a little water. If you put a ton of water, it's going to take you a long time to mix it. You'll be surprised how long this takes. So the way that you actually grind the ink stick itself, might as well use this side, is you're going to hold it straight up and down. Don't hold it like this. Don't hold it like this. You're going to hold it straight up and down like this, and you're going to rub like this, okay? The reason why we do that is that so that as we rub away the ink, the bottom stays really flat, right? So it doesn't like become like, you know, an angle or something. It's up to you though, obviously, if it's your ink. Now we're going to start, and you can hear the reason why I call it grinding. Can you hear that? Okay, so that's that grinding sound. So we're going to just keep working this. And you'll notice with a lot of these beautiful inks that they'll add other ingredients to the ink, including incense. So when you're grinding these, not only is it fun, but it smells great. So we're going to keep working this. And it's kind of difficult, especially in the camera. Can you see? It's difficult to tell how black it is, right? It's like, because the inkstone itself is black. But the sort of rule of thumb is do more than you think you need to, because it takes a long time for the ink to become really black. So you could see when I turned it up like this, all of the ink flowed down into the reservoir. Do you see it there? So what I can do is I can kind of pop it out of the reservoir and keep it in the shallow section, and then I can continue. And every once in a while, what I'll do is I'll venture out of the shallow end of the pool into the deep end, and I'm going to pull some of that back up. So if you don't do that, then the water in the deep end, or the liquid in the deep end, will be mostly water, and it'll be more ink over here. So you got to kind of mix it up. Okay? So I'm going to keep working that. You just kind of go for it here. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to pull from the basin up towards the shallow side. Keep going. Pull from the basin up, shallow end. Keep going. And every once in a while, I like to pick the whole thing up and gently kind of mix everything around. So again, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to mix the pigment, the soot, with the water. So we got to kind of keep mixing it around. If you just keep grinding here and nothing else, the ink will be very irregular. Okay, it'll be more water in certain sections. So I'm going to keep grinding. Okay, I'm going to keep grinding. Okay, I'm going to keep grinding. Okay, I'm going to keep grinding. All right, so we're pretty good. I've been grinding for a little while now. I'm going to kind of just push all of it down with from the shallow end to the deep end. And you can see that the ink it's kind of hard to see in the camera. And the way that you test the ink is that you usually have a little piece of paper here, like this, a little white piece of paper. And I just use my finger, so I'm going to just kind of lightly tab into the thing. And you can see already it's pretty dark. And then what you can do is you can dot it onto the paper. Now, what's good about this, or what's the advantage of this type of ink making, is that you can get it as black or as light as you want. So if you wanted, let's say, a really light gray pigment, then you can use this and you can just grind it a little less. The darker or the more you grind it, the darker obviously the pigment's gonna get, okay? So there's not really much of a trick to it. My only tip really is to keep moving it around. So you can't just keep going back and forth here. You gotta kind of pull from the base and back up. All right, that's it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that video. We upload every week, so check back soon for more content.